Buddy, put that thing back in its holster. We haven't gone anywhere.
I don't understand.
Check out the MichaelDukesShow.com for information on how to get access to the podcast.
The Michael Dukes Show.
I have 2 guns, one for each of you.
Firearms Friday.
As Thomas Jefferson stated, it is the right and duty of the people to be at all times armed.
Say hello to my little friend.
I say that the Second Amendment is, in order of importance, the First Amendment. The right to keep and bear arms is the one right that allows rights to exist at all.
The Michael Dukes Show. The right to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. Firearms
From my cold, dead hands.
Friday.
Take my rifle, this is my gun, this is for riding, this is for fun.
Firearms Friday.
Firearms Friday. Hello and good morning. Welcome to you, all my sleepyhead creatures out there. Thank you for coming on board and joining us today on this beautiful Friday. Cold and snowy. It's sticking around, buddy. Sticking around. It's not going anywhere for now, but summer's around the corner. That's all I can say. Summer is just around the corner. Looking forward to that for sure. Welcome to Firearms Friday, the one day a week that we dedicate to the Second Amendment and to talking about everything related to guns and gun rights and firearms and just a little bit of everything related to guns as well. So thank you for coming in and be a part of it today. We got a lot to talk about here this morning. We're going to be joined here in just a few moments by Jacob Sullum from Reason Magazine. He is the senior editor over there at Reason, a nationally syndicated columnist, and he writes he writes a whole bunch of stuff, good stuff over at Reason, covering everything from drug policy to gun rights to public health, civil liberties, criminal justice. He writes all kinds of stuff. And you should be following him. You should be following him and reading his stuff, as you do with J.D. Tuccilli and Emma Camp and others from Reason Magazine. One of the best online publications for getting your news, in my humble opinion, that you can find out there. It literally is my first choice and go-to for many stories and many of the topics that are out there today. Anyway, Jacob is going to come on today to talk with us about what's going on in Colorado, where they had a bill that would abolish the right to carry for many folks for self-defense with their sensitive spaces bill. There's been an update to this as well. Jacob wrote about this about 8-9 days ago, and there's just been an update this morning, which we'll get into, where it's been amended, and we'll talk about that. We'll also talk about how California and a federal judge in California has ruled that disarming people based on nullified convictions is a violation of the Second Amendment, and this is a big deal as well. This judge came back and basically said, no, you can't. Basically said, no, you can't do that. That violates the Constitution. In California, they said this. So it's some crazy stuff, and we'll get some details on that as well. Plus all the other stories that we've got, and of course, maybe some phone calls in hour 2, and then we will finish up with Willie Waffle from wafflemovies.com at the end of the show, where we'll sit down and go over all the weekend movie reviews and stuff and things, and it'll be fun. So that's the whole rundown, and I appreciate I appreciate you guys coming on board and being part of that with us. I also we'll take some phone calls, like I said, in hour 2, and talk about that as well. I think we got plenty of stuff to talk about here in hour 1, so we'll wait a bit before we crank the phone lines open and get started over there. All right. What are some of the numbers, some of the news and stories and numbers that we've got here? I guess we'll start off with this one because this is actually an interesting piece of news from Tom Knighton over at Bearing Arms, that talking about the number of gun sales in the United States just in the last couple months. I've often talked about how I believe that the number of guns in the U.S. is being woefully underreported, and I'm not sad about that. I want to be clear about that. It used to be, that they said, well, there's 200 million guns in America. Now, I'm not a college graduate, but even I could look at the numbers from the NICS background checks that have been going on since, 1990? It's been 20 plus years of NICS background checks. And even I could look at that in the mid 90s, late 90s, early 2000s and see that that number of 200 million guns was low. And as time went on, of course, those numbers continued to increase. And it wasn't, was it 3 years ago? They updated those numbers and now said that there are 400 million guns in circulation. And to which I would say, well, you're getting closer. My estimates has always been, because you have guns that have been around for years, hand-me-downs, bringbacks from the wars, war trophies that have been gone. I've seen war trophies in my time where people, had bringback guns from World War II and other places where, those are guns that have never been registered or whatever. So my estimate has always been that there's been probably closer to, 600 or 700 million guns in America is my estimate. But, at least they're getting closer. But the good news is that those numbers keep on growing because the more people who buy guns, the more people who will, at least in time, become advocates for the right to keep and bear them, I would hope, anyway. They start to realize that having a gun doesn't make you mean, adversarial, dangerous, scary. It's not a mystical totem that infects people with rage and whatever. Although that's what you see in the movies and TV, I know, so it's a little confusing. But the gun sales have been good, and they've been good for a while. But in an election year, all bets are off, especially when you got somebody like Joe Biden, the Muppet in Chief, who, has a hard time stringing a sentence together. But, the one thing that he really wants is he wants to disarm you and take your guns. I mean, it's there. Yet March gun sales have already topped a very, very strong February. According to guns.com, Americans continue to reach into their wallet when it comes to practicing the right to keep and bear arms, with data suggesting that over-the-counter gun sales passed the 1 million mark for the 56th month in a row. Okay, so just think about that for a minute. 1 mil. This is over the, and that's not the total number. That's just they passed more than 1 million guns a month for 56 months in a row. Well, that would mean at least 56 million guns in circulation over the last 56 months. Last month was the 7th highest March on record in terms of federal background checks of the NICS system. The unadjusted figures of 2.497 million checks, so almost 2.5 million checks through NICS last month, was a 15% decrease from the unadjusted NICS figures for the March before, which was 2.95 million. It is actually 6.6% higher than the 2.3 million logged in February of 2023. Now, when you have to adjust for those numbers because you have to remove gun permit checks and rechecks, right? So guns that were being sold that had already been checked into the system, or gun permit checks. But the adjusted figure stands at 1.45 million guns, which again is a little bit lower than it was a few years ago. And in fact, there have been 6 marches that have been greater than that. But again, the 56th month in a row where gun sales passed the 1 million mark. That's, I got to be honest, that's pretty exciting for me. Because to me, that shows me one thing, that we, in a way, are winning. Because more people are buying guns than ever before. Those numbers continue to increase and have increased over the last, 15 years. And that, when we look at numbers like the NSSF's numbers, they're showing that, 8 million new gun owners came about here a year or two ago, and majority of them were made up of women and minorities and people with more progressive views. I think that's a good thing, because people understood, especially during time of crisis, that they needed to be able to protect themselves. And now that they're in that deep end of the pool, they're going to want to be able to defend that right. They're going to want to be able to defend that right and hold on to that. I mean, it's an amazing thing. And I'll be honest, this is just the number of NICS checks in the system for new gun buyers or people who purchased guns, through a legal, through the FFL, through a legal gun dealer. We're not talking about, private sales and times guns have changed hands. These are mostly new guns that are being sold by dealers. And then, of course, Eskimo Libertarian in the chat room mentions that people now have 3D printers as well. So, yeah, desktop CNC milling machines, 3D printers. This just accounts for ones that are manufactured by major manufacturers and are sold through a FFL. So, I mean, it's a good sign. Now, Brian asks, he said, you got to wonder if we're hitting the saturation point. I don't know. Maybe we will hit a saturation point. But to me, it shows that we are doing well in trying to convince people of of normalizing it, right? Because they've done a hell of a job denormalizing it, making it so that you're a wackadoo if you want to have a gun. And we're moving the needle back in the other way. I think that's a fantastic thing. So that was our piece of good news for today, is that the March gun sales are up, and we're going into an election year, and it's going to be, I think it could be a pretty significant one. I honestly would be buying guns regardless of which one of the Muppets you're going to vote for, because neither one of them is good for the Second Amendment, in my opinion. One is definitely worse than the other, but neither one of them is good for your right to keep and bear arms. That's just my humble opinion. All right, we got to go. Jacob Sullum, senior editor, Reason Magazine, will be joining us here in a minute. We will be back with more. The Michael Duke Show. Common sense, liberty-based, free-thinking radio.
If you missed the show, you can listen to it on your time with Dukes On Demand. Oh, and it's free. Like America used to be. Streaming live every weekday morning on Facebook Live and MichaelDukesShow.com.
Okay, we're in the break right now. Commercial break is running. Hello, my pretties, and your little dogs, too. What's happening? What's going on? I see that the man, the myth, the legend, Jacob Sullum, is in the green room, hanging out with me down there, ready to do it. I always look forward to this. Hello, my friend. How are you doing? Whoa. Okay. So, Jacob, we're going to need to reconnect because you sound like a fax machine. The audio is like a fax machine. I can't actually hear your voice. All I hear is. So, I don't know if it's me or you, but if you want to try and reconnect, we could do that one more time, or you could give me another check real quick. Yeah. Yeah, it still sounds like a fax machine. And I think he's pulling something. Oh, new headphones. Okay. We're going to try it out there and see what we can get with that. And look at that. The Bluetooth headphones are the bomb, man. I got to tell you, they work good. We're getting them on. So we're going to let him do it there. Okay. All right. So while we wait for him to sort out his stuff, we'll see.
Can you hear me?
I can hear you. Hey, look at that. It worked good. Oh, I just lost you. I heard you when you said, "Can you hear me?" And then I lost you. Nope. Yeah, I heard you for like they said, "Can you hear me?" And I said, "Yes." And then you went off the air. So you want to reconnect? Okay, he's giving me the reconnect button. All right. So he'll reconnect here in a minute and we'll get things squared away. All right, let me go back over here to the comment section here. Wait. We're not safer under Biden. We have to be wrong. Can there be a saturation point? 5 billion a year. Yeah, that's about right. All right, I see Jacob's back in here again. Let's try it again. Hello.
Hey, can you hear me now?
I can hear you now. Can you hear me now?
Great.
He works for Verizon. Can you hear me now?
For some reason, StreamYard hates my Bluetooth headset.
You know,
it only wants the wired one. I've tried, and I thought there was something wrong with the headset, but I've tried it with other platforms and it works fine. So,
well,
I don't know what StreamYard's problem is, but
they are bigots. That's the problem. Bigots against Bluetooth.
They're anti-Bluetooth bigots, I guess.
That's exactly. They're anti-Bluetooth bigots. I can't believe it. And well, you see that I never have to worry about that because I got this thing on my head all the time, but I appreciate it. All right. It's I'm ready to talk about this. Did you happen to see the update this morning? I know we were going to talk about the Colorado bill.
Yeah.
You see the update that happened this morning?
It's pretty funny.
Yeah, no, well, but it's also smart, and we'll talk about this with the listeners, but I think it's also smart because they realize that they could get immediately slapped down, or they could let this stretch out a little bit more and try and see if they could get it through now that they've narrowed it down a bit. But because I just don't think that this ploy is going to continue to work in places because they keep trying to use it and the courts keep smacking them right in the face over it. So we'll have to see what's going on. How you been, my friend? Everything good?
Yeah, I threw my back out a couple of weeks ago. It's gradually getting better. The pain seems to be traveling down my leg now. I'm hoping to go all the way. I want it to go all the way down my leg and then out my foot. Is that?
Yes, please.
I'm not a doctor, but
it'll work that way. I'm just going to ground myself.
Medically feasible.
Yeah, I'm just going to ground myself. It'll go right out my foot. I always remember, I used to laugh at people, those, people couldn't stand up, and I'd be like, come on, man, suck it up. And then one Thanksgiving, I woke up and I could not stand up straight. And that was educational. Let's just say that was educational for sure.
Well, I can dress myself again, so it's a big improvement.
Hey, those are called quality of life improvements. That's what we're looking for. All right, Jacob, hold the line for just a second, folks. We're ready to jump into it. Here we go, the Michael Dukes Show. Common sense, liberty-based, free-thinking radio. Like, share, subscribe, ring the bell. Jacob Sullum from Reason Magazine, our guest. Let's continue on and get to it right now, shall we? Let's do it.
What the hell is an assault weapon? Does that mean that if we hurt your feelings, you should consider the Michael Dukes Show assault radio? Okay, we can accept that. Here's Michael Dukes. Kind of a dick, but somewhat funny.
I would argue that I'm a little bit more than somewhat funny, but I am kind of a jerk. I mean, that is how it is. Welcome back to the program. It is the Michael Dukes Show, and it is Firearms Friday, your chance to sound off on issues of a two-way nature. Where we talk about guns and gun rights and gun laws and what's happening across the country, the court decisions and everything else. Joining me today, national columnist, senior editor, Reason Magazine. He's written a bunch of books. He's has his own syndicated column. He's doing everything else. And he has been writing specifically about the effects of the Bruen decision across the spectrum. And we've got two stories today that I've asked him to talk about, including what's going on in Colorado and how California violated the Second Amendment by disarming people who had convictions that were decades old and had been nullified. Jacob Sullum from Reason Magazine joins us this morning to discuss. Hello, my friend. How's life in the big city?
It's all right. How's life there?
You know, it's quiet, but the winter will not end. I mean, come on, we just keep getting snow and cold, and I'm just like, I'm done with it. I'm ready for the green. I need more green in my life, and not the intoxicating kind. I need some greenery, out there for everything else. So we're ready to go and get stuff squared away. Well, Jacob, let's first take a crack at this, and let's talk about Colorado first because it's back in the news from yesterday. But Colorado, like many other states, decided to poke a finger in the eye of gun owners after the Bruen decision, because the Bruen decision basically said states should issue and there shouldn't be a bunch of restrictions, but they did leave the wiggle room of the so-called sensitive spaces. In many states like California and New York and Hawaii, so they created a laundry list of places that you basically couldn't carry, which means you essentially wouldn't have been able to carry anywhere. You couldn't walk outside your house, kind of thing. And Colorado attempted to do the same thing. Let's chat about that.
Yeah, so it was somewhat surprising that this happened in Colorado because Colorado, unlike those other states you mentioned, has been a shell issue state for a long time, meaning that its procedures for issuing carry permits complied with Bruen. They weren't forced to change their law as a result of Bruen in the way that New York and New Jersey and Hawaii and Maryland had to. They have their general rule is if you meet a set of objective criteria, then you get a permit. And that's that sort of regime that is acceptable to the Supreme Court. But it decided anyway or at least a few legislators in Colorado decided anyway to copy what these other previously may issue states decided to do by imposing a bunch of restrictions on what you can do with your permit once you get it. So these other states made it easier to get the permit and almost impossible to use it. In Colorado, it was always relatively easy to get the permit, but now they're like, maybe we don't want people to use it. And so the bill that was introduced in February looked very much like the bills that were introduced in places like New York and California, in that it listed a bunch of places, a couple of dozen public places where you were not allowed to have guns, even if you have a permit. Notably, it included the parking areas adjacent to those sensitive places. So the sensitive places included things like playgrounds, museums, zoos, parks, bars, pot shops, a long list of places. So it wasn't just that you couldn't enter those places with your gun. You also couldn't go and park near those places. So if you have a shopping mall that includes a bank, that was another sensitive place, a bank or a bar, even if you're not going to the bank or the bar, you're in the parking area adjacent to them because it's at the parking mall. So you can't have your concealed weapon in the parking lot. And they had an exception that said, as long as it's in a locked container in your car, it's okay. But on the face of it, it seemed to mean that you had to arrange to do that before you got to the parking lot. So
like you couldn't pull in and then disarm yourself because you're already in the parking lot, right? So you had to stop on the street or something. Yeah.
Yeah, you'd be committing a misdemeanor simply by arriving at the parking lot because it takes some time to put your gun in the locked container. So you'd have to find some place that's not sensitive, that's neither a sensitive place nor a parking area adjacent to a sensitive place, in order to lock up your gun and then proceed to your destination. So obviously this makes it highly impractical to actually use your permit. A lot of the time it's going to have to be in a locked container. And it's not just a matter of places you're specifically going, but also places that are near those places. And, over the course of a day, you may go to a bunch of places or traverse a bunch of places that are considered sensitive. And you're constantly going to have to be putting your gun in and out of the locked container. So it was deliberately making it very difficult to actually use carry permits. Right. One thing that Colorado's bill had, I guess, in its favor, it didn't go quite as far as California and New York did. They both had a default rule that said, in addition to this long list of places where you're not allowed to have a gun, any business that we haven't previously mentioned, you're not allowed to have a gun there either unless the owner posts a sign explicitly saying it's okay, or you can get some other kind of express permission from him. Right. So in other words, that it establishes a default rule for all businesses open to the public. Right. You may not have guns there, except it's going to be relatively a rare situation where the owner, a gun dealer might very well post such a sign. That probably would not alienate a lot of his customers. But most general businesses have to worry, is this going to, either offend or intimidate my other customers who aren't so keen on the Second Amendment? And so they're not going to be generally not going to be inclined to post a sign like that. So Colorado did not include a rule like that. But the cumulative effect of all these specific restrictions would be to make it highly impractical to actually exercise the right that the Supreme Court has upheld. And Dave Kopel from the Independence Institute, he submitted written testimony against the bill, and he noted a couple of things. A woman who goes jogging through a park, say early in the morning, and might want to have protection, can't, because that's a park. Right. And if you go to a mall that has a bank, you can't have a gun with you.
And see, to me, that was like one of the biggest things, the whole parking lot inclusion, because as you point out, how many times have you gone to a mall where there's a small little branch, right? Like one or two tellers or something like that, or a small little I have no intention. I'm going to the shoe store to buy shoes. I'm not going to the bank or to the thing, but I'm breaking the law if I carry my pistol into the parking lot and into that mall that may include some little branch of something that's excluded. This is meant to be inconvenient.
Or a bar. Yeah, and the thing about the banks is that, I guess they think that sounds logical, right? Because stop bank robbers, because you won't be you won't be officially allowed to bring a gun into a bank. Of course, bank robbers aren't worried about getting a concealed carry permit, and they're not worried about violating these gun-free zones. And Dave Kopel pointed out that and the plaintiffs in the California case who are challenging their law pointed out that this has never happened.
Right.
That somebody with a carry permit has gone into a bank and robbed it or assaulted anybody or anything. The state, California, could not cite a single example of that ever happening. And they said that didn't matter because it could still be a sensitive place within the meaning that the Supreme Court has recognized, even if nothing bad has ever happened there. Right. So that was the state of play until this week. We had this bill that went nearly as far as California's did. And a lot of people complained about it. And the result was that this week, a new version was introduced that eliminated almost all of these sensitive places. So the original list was a couple dozen. Now it is basically down to government buildings, polling places, and schools. And the schools includes, K to 12 schools, but also universities. And there's some exceptions. But they also said, you say you're going to a government building. Originally, you wouldn't have been allowed to have your concealed handgun with you in the parking lot arriving at that building, which obviously can create problems if you're running errands, and so they said one exception is if you have a carry permit, you're allowed to have it in the parking area of the building, although not in the building itself. Right. So this looks now. I think there still are potential problems, especially. This whole issue of banning guns from all kinds of schools, serving people of all ages,
including private schools, right? This isn't
just
private schools, yes. Private schools, right? Which
right, and that
institutions
that's potentially problematic. And there's these long-standing bans at the state level and also at the federal level on possessing guns within a school zone, but they have exceptions for people who are licensed, and even that. The idea of creating a zone around the sensitive area. So it's not just the sensitive place itself, but it's a zone within 1,000 feet, say, of a school. That also is dubious and really has not been seriously tested so far, because even if you grant that the school itself is a sensitive place, it doesn't mean that the whole area around it likewise is. But right. So I think, they still will probably, assuming this bill passes in Colorado, they will still probably face challenges. But what they reckoned, and this is Democrats who said, it wasn't just the Republicans complaining about the bill. There were Democrats who said, why are you doing this? It's going to get slapped down by the court. It's pointless. And so they dramatically scaled it back. And so the current version may pass, but it's certainly much less problematic than the original version.
Yeah, no, absolutely. In fact, the main driver behind this bill, according to CPR.org, was Senator Dylan Roberts, who's a Democrat. And he said the new version would have a stronger legal standing. He said it's very limited. It's tailored. It removes many of the spaces introduced in the first version of the bill because they're specifically trying to make sure that it will withstand, hopefully, legal scrutiny, because they've seen what's happened in California. They've seen what's happened in New York, where the courts continue to slap down this sensitive space thing. But they keep trying.
Yeah, this is so let me say, I think it's at least 5 states where federal courts have intervened to say at least some of these restrictions that you're trying to impose are not constitutional. And even the Second Circuit, which upheld several of New York's restrictions, rejected that rule, the default rule about no guns in businesses open to the public. It said that is wacky. That's they said, you try to look for a historical precedent for that. A default rule that you just can't have guns, in businesses open to the public, and it's impossible to find any such precedent. With the more narrow restrictions, the states will argue that this is kind of like this. There's kind of like that, and then the courts have to decide: are these historical examples? First of all, are they representative of laws, say, around the time the Second Amendment was adopted, or around the time the 14th Amendment was ratified, making the Second Amendment applicable to the states? Was there a tradition of imposing this sort of restriction that was well accepted? So that you get into issues of how many states have these laws, how long do they have them? Right. Were there legal challenges to them? And then the thing that's most open to interpretation is this analogous enough? Is this relevantly similar? Right.
Because the states so far, the governmental prosecutors or the defense, the attorneys and everything else, they've done a pretty poor job of trying to find analogous stuff. They've stretched the definition of analogous in many cases, and in some cases, they just don't provide any, analogous examples of anything. They just say because we said so. because it might happen. And I think, again, we're seeing the legacy of Brune play out in this. Well, we're going to look back and see that Brune is one of the most important pro-gun or gun protection decisions in the history of the country, quite honestly, I believe.
Yes, I mean, it's going to have a really ultimately a sweeping impact, I think, because it calls into question a lot of what politicians tend to call common sense, gun safety legislation, which to them is common sense, but it doesn't mean it has any kind of historical pedigree.
Right.
And what the states will often do is they'll resort to a very high level of a high level of generality in making these comparisons. So
Right.
they will look at historical statutes and say these stand for this general idea. For example, if guns were banned in schoolhouses, right? The general idea that in settings where there are children, you shouldn't have guns like that. So that'll get you pretty far if that's the general principle, because
Right.
there are children all over the place. So hence, playgrounds, parks, zoos, museums, right? You can cover it. And if that's not good enough, they will say people who are especially vulnerable. So that could be the elderly, it could be the disabled.
It's
so
a whole
that
group.
Loops in
Yeah.
healthcare facilities of all sorts. And it honestly, it depends on the judge as to whether they're willing to accept that sort of analysis. Some are more receptive to it than others. But it's worth noting that in Maryland, it was a Democratic, I think it was a Barack Obama appointee who said several of Maryland's restrictions were unconstitutional, even though it was clear he was sympathetic to the government's argument. He was inclined to uphold rules like these. He did uphold some of them, but he said some of these, you're just not meeting the test laid out in Brune.
No bueno for you, my friend. All right, so that's Colorado. Things are changing there. We're going to talk about California up next. Jacob Sullum from Reason Magazine joins us. We'll continue with this in just a moment. The Michael Duke Show. Common sense, liberty-based, free thinking radio.
Running on 100% pure beard power. Oh, also some coffee. We dip our beard in coffee.
Nice beard.
The Michael Duke Show.
Okay, we continue with Jacob Sullum from Reason Magazine. Yeah, I mean, the one that got me, Jacob, and you pointed it out again, was this idea that now all businesses, if you're in commerce, they're officially barred unless you slap a label on the window that says guns are welcome, which, of course, we know in many communities would alienate half of their clientele, even if the clientele was, they would just, and that, again, that was intentional. And I was so happy to see many of the justices go, that's nuts. You can't do that. You can't do that. But again, this was not about public safety. This was not about keeping people safe or stopping crime. This was about sticking a finger in the eye of gun owners and concealed carry holders by creating this patchwork where you could break the law half a dozen times just crossing town in your car. It was insanity. And this is how they keep pushing back. And I think it's going to require more court cases to ratchet that back even further.
Yeah, I mean, the sponsors of the Colorado bill implied that this would have some impact on mass shootings, which is really, it's hard to imagine how that would work because as Dave Kopel pointed out, something like 84 or 85% of mass shootings happen in places that are already gun-free zones. And, obviously Second Amendment people will tend to argue that that's not coincidental, that shooters tend to target places where they know they're unlikely to encounter armed resistance.
Right.
Whether or not you accept that argument, it's clearly not going to deter somebody who's determined to murder a bunch of people they just passed this bill that says I'm not allowed to have a gun here. It's just craziness. And then in terms of crime generally, you get into the issue of, well, who are the people who are actually affected by the restrictions? That's only the permit holders.
The law-abiding,
the only,
right?
Yeah, And,
law-abiding citizens.
and if you do a comparison of, on average, people who have carry permits versus people who don't, the people with the permits are much more law-abiding, much less likely to get arrested, be convicted. They in Colorado, Dave Kopel showed it's quite rare for somebody to lose their permit as a result of an arrest. The same is true in other states. So it's completely misdirected. The solution is completely misdirected in the sense that it's, in terms of mass shooters, it's applying a rule that those mass shooters are never going to follow anyway. And in terms of the people it actually affects, who are the permit holders, they should be the group you're least concerned about, given their track record.
Because again, statistically, if you look at it nationwide, concealed carry permit holders commit crimes at a lower rate than sworn police officers, which is, it's shocking to a lot of people that figure that when they see that. But the statistic is concealed carry holders commit crimes at a lower rate than sworn police officers. And who are you going to trust more at that point?
Yes. That's a general inconsistency among people who support gun control, is that they seem to be fine with cops having guns.
Only the police.
With the security guards, with Secret Service, the security guards who guard celebrities and politicians, that's okay. But otherwise, no.
No, it's frightening. And Dr. Lott, we had Dr. John Lott here on the program 3 weeks ago. We were talking specifically about the gun-free zone thing. And he said in the vast majority of writings, when a shooter has left a manifesto or diaries or written plans or anything, he says in the vast majority of them, they all talk about how they chose their targets specifically. There's always a mention of the fact that there won't be anybody armed in there, that they're gun-free zones, that they won't meet resistance, that they won't get the higher kill count or whatever. And to say that doesn't matter is ridiculous, because the statistical evidence is right there to show that they choose. And like you said, to say that, a guy decides, well, I'm going to go to a mall today and shoot a bunch of people because I'm mad at whatever and I want my minute of fame. And he walks up and sees a sign on the door that says no guns allowed. And he goes, well, I was going to do that, but no guns.
Or he suddenly realizes that there's a bank or a bar in that mall. And he's like, shit, I can't even have a gun in the parking lot.
Yeah, exactly.
What am I going to do?
No, it's insane. And like I said, I think we're starting to see a little bit of sense come in here. I mean, at least they're understanding with this Colorado senator, at least they're starting to understand that their stuff's going to be arbitrarily shredded unless they tailor it down. Like you said, it went from a dozen plus places to 4. But including private schools on there, I think, is a problem. And as you mentioned earlier, there's a whole nother story that we could do, a whole nother show we could do on the school areas where you've got these exclusion zones around a quarter mile. 1,000 feet is almost a quarter mile around these schools where you've got to be excluded. How many times do you drive by a school and you could see it, across the road? I mean, it's, how many times there's some crazy stuff going on. And we could be discussing that. Okay, let's jump back into it. California. This was a pretty surprising thing. Let's get to it. Jacob Sullum, Reason Magazine, our guest, The Michael Duke Show, Common Sense Radio.
What the hell is an assault weapon?
Get all of the murder guns and the attack guns and not keep selling those to people and just sell protection guns. I think that would be great and solve a lot of problems.
Does this mean that if we hurt your feelings, you'd consider the Michael Dukes Show assault radio? Okay, we can live with that. Here's Michael Dukes.
That's right. I have only protection guns. No murder guns or attack guns. I only have protection guns because that makes sense. Jacob Sullum, Reason Magazine. He is here to talk with us about some of the stories that he's written recently. We just finished up with a discussion on Colorado, but California. We've been seeing some things the last year or two out of California that I would consider to be kind of common sense decisions from judges, etc. The most recent one, which you wrote about here just last month, is a series of people who had had their gun rights for years, but when they went to do something like renew an eligibility certificate or something else, somebody dredged up something from their past 20, 30, 40 years before and said, well, no, you were arrested for this or that, and now you're not eligible, even though these things were nullified convictions, like they weren't upheld. And it became a whole thing, and a judge had to intervene. So give us a story here on this.
Yeah, so the plaintiffs in this case are men who committed relatively minor crimes in their late teens. And this is decades later, so they're middle-aged. And just to give you a sense of it, one of them, when he was in the Navy, was pulled over for riding a motorcycle while intoxicated. One of them, when he was like 19, was caught stealing tools from an open truck, but that was still considered burglary. And then the third one was classified as credit card abuse. He claimed somebody gave him a credit card, and the person claimed he was authorized to use it and said, you can use it too. And it turned out that was not true, right? So not that these are not shouldn't be crimes at all, but they're not very serious crimes. They were committed when these men were quite young, and then all of them were either vacated or dismissed, sometimes after they had completed probation or met certain requirements imposed by the judge. So in other words, the judges involved in these cases decided, you screwed up, but you're rehabilitated, and we don't want you to have a record. The problem is that in California, it's not good enough, or at least it was not good enough until now. Their rule, which is stricter than the rule in most other states or the rule under federal law, is that if you've been convicted of a felony, you can't own a gun ever unless you either receive a pardon, so a pardon from a governor or a presidential pardon would do, that explicitly says, I am restoring your gun rights. That's one way. The other way is if you get a judicial ruling that reduces your conviction from a felony to a misdemeanor. Neither of those conditions were met in these cases, even though the convictions had been essentially nullified or vacated by the original courts. And so this came up for one of these plaintiffs. This is especially crazy. He had worked for the state of California as a correctional officer for 30 years, and he had been a firearms instructor. And he was as part of his job, he was in charge of teaching people how to use guns and instructing people in the use of force. And so he was, as far as the state of California was concerned, he was fine, obviously, or they wouldn't be letting him do all this. But then it's not clear exactly how the record got updated or changed. But at a certain point, he went to renew the certificate that you need to be a firearms instructor. And he was told, no, we can't renew it because, look, you have this old conviction. I think that was the credit card abuse conviction.
Right.
And he was, completely dismayed because, first of all, how can that be true? But also, how can I have been an approved not only gun owner but firearms instructor and correctional officer for decades, and all of a sudden you're saying I can't do any of those things anymore. I'm not allowed to have a gun. So just that kind of crazy. And so the judge agreed that was kind of crazy, and the state really, did not. He was clearly frustrated with the state's case because they didn't even make a serious effort to show that this sort of rule was grounded in history, that it was consistent with the historical tradition of firearm regulation as Bruin requires. And he says at one point in his opinion, the state suggested that if I gave him a little more time, they might try harder. And he says, look, I can't hold your hand. It's not my job.
Yeah.
Like, I could go do your research for you, but that's not my job either. The burden is on you. And this is actually quite important, is that Bruin, it's not just that Bruin established this, clarified the test and grounded it in, historical precedent, but that it put the burden of showing that on the government, right? So perhaps in a given case, you could make an argument that something is consistent with historical tradition, but you just didn't bother to look it up. You didn't bother to do your work. That means
they didn't offer one historical context analog. They didn't offer one, and then they said, "Well, if you told us that that's what you were going to base it on, we would have done better."
Yes.
But
so that's it's interesting in what it says about the attitude of government lawyers who maybe are just not used to having to actually defend these laws in a serious way. And so they may be put out by the fact that the burden is on them to do that. But if you don't even bother, there's no way you're going to prevail as the government if the burden's on you. They also tried this argument that people who with criminal records or certain kinds of criminal records are not even part of the people whose right to keep and bear arms is protected by the Second Amendment, that you're just excluded from that. So we don't even have to talk about like the scope of the Second Amendment, or you're not part of the people because you misused somebody's credit card when you're 19. That's it. That's it for you. For the rest of your life, you're not part of the people anymore. And so other courts have rejected that. The Third Circuit said no, after very careful analysis. That was a case involving a guy who committed what was a misdemeanor involving food stamp fraud. It was a misdemeanor in Pennsylvania, but it was theoretically punishable by a few years in prison, even though he didn't actually serve any time in jail. And he permanently lost his gun rights as a result of that under federal law. And the Third Circuit said, no, that does not mark him as the sort of dangerous person who permanently loses his Second Amendment rights. And the judge in the California case noted the Third Circuit's opinion and said, no, you're still part of the people. Now you have to say whether this rule, this limitation on your right, is consistent with the historical tradition. And they didn't even bother to do that.
Yeah, no, it's some crazy stuff. But I guess the whole point of this, I think, Jacob, is that we are kind of winning in this regard, where even justices who are Obama appointees, or they are starting to realize they have to toe the line on this, and they're as much as they may want the government to win, they're having to make and take a stand on those decisions. Jacob Sullum, Reason Magazine. Thank you, my friend. Hold the line for a second, folks. We're out of time for hour one. Hour two is dead ahead. Back with more right after this. Jacob, you didn't hit the best quote out of that whole thing from that judge, where he said essentially that the court is not a helicopter parent.
Right. I forgot the phrase he used. Yeah,
exactly. He said it's not manifestly not the court's job to poke and prod the litigants to live up to their burdens of proof. I mean, I thought that was pretty scathing in the end. We're not a helicopter parent here. We're all adults.
Right. Yeah. They just, some cases they take their job more seriously than others, and they make a harder effort. But yeah, I think that it's like a new world they're living in now, where they actually have to justify these policies they never had to justify before. So they're sort of caught off guard, I guess.
Yeah, it used to be the easy button, right? I'm a federal prosecutor, I'm a state prosecutor, and I've got these gun laws, and the courts are always on my side. So I just say it's in the public's interest, the public safety, and the judge says okay and nods, and we get what we want. Instead of what Bruin said, well, show us how this is justified. And then they're like, what? We have to justify it? And so half the time they can't even find anything. Half the time they don't turn in any justification. And then the other half, it's some stretch about some law about knives or something, or, not drinking, actively being drunk while you have a gun and everything. And they try and
trap guns. That's one of my favorites.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's
I just want to carry it in public for self-defense. I don't want to set it to go off when you cross the string. Yeah. That's not my plan. It's just
how are they justifying that kind of thing for he's lying in wait or it's a trap? I mean, it's insane, and I think we're seeing that desperation. That's why these sensitive space rulings or the bills have come out, but the rulings continue to shoot them down, and I think they're starting to realize. I think Colorado proves they're starting to realize that they're going to either have to narrow that focus or give up on that vein of attack. And I mean, I guess we'll see. I guess we'll see where that goes from here. But it definitely has had some troubling overtones since Bruin, and I've been wondering how long it will last before they give up on that tactic as well.
Yeah, I think it won't be that long. Presumably, if you get a circuit split, and there could be. I mean, the Second Circuit upheld parts of New York's law and rejected others. If you get a split where one court is saying this is basically okay and another circuit court is saying it's not, then it seems likely the Supreme Court will take it up.
Yeah, no, I think as well. I think that one of the newest frontiers, and Colio Noir touched on this here the other day, but one of the newest frontiers is attorneys who are now going after social media platforms for their gun content, saying that contributes to mass shootings and gun violence. They've stopped going after, because of the NPLAA, they can't go after the manufacturer. So now they're trying to kill the gun culture through attacking YouTube and Meta and all these other people, because that's essentially where the gun culture is living right now, because they don't really have any other places. And now there's attorneys who have been granted the ability to try and go after platforms for their user content. And, instead of just being, we're a platform that just hosts it,
Why isn't that totally ruled out by the federal immunity for
Section 203? Yeah. I mean, I don't know. Yeah. It was just noted 2 days ago that a judge has allowed the case to go forward, even though that had been the thing they threw out there and said, we're immune from that. We're just a provider of the platform, not the content. Right. And the judge said, no, that can still go forward. So we'll see where that goes. But I guess it's kind of a smart attack if that's what you want to do, because if you take down the public square where people could talk about things and vilify it more and drive it underground, because I think they see that we're winning this argument in some ways.
Yeah, well, I have to take a look at that case. That's surprising to me. I mean, sometimes they'll try to argue that the platforms actually participated in the production in some way. That there's something that, they tried this with algorithms, that if the algorithm recommends your gun video, say, then you're really playing a role in it's not just their speech. It also somehow becomes yours.
They talked about systems and structure. Yeah. They talked about the systems and structure of the social platform.
Yeah. So, yeah, I mean, it's troubling in a very broad sense. It's not limited to guns. People don't like speech they disagree with, it turns out. And and they if it were up to them, that people wouldn't be allowed to say that stuff, and this is just sort of a new context in which that impulse is working its way out, but it's right. the underlying, constitutional principles remain the same.
Well, Colio Noir, like I said, he put out a video a couple days ago about it, just a brief little slurp. So if you want to see the details on it, you can go over there and catch it. And then I'd love to hear your thoughts on it when it's all said and done, because I think that might be the next frontier that they keep track of. It used to be, it was OSHA and the ammunition, because your gun without bullets is a club, and and then it was this, and then it was the lead, and now they're trying to find every end run around that they can to make it more difficult for gun owners to exercise their rights or to come together and share their hobby or their passion, and it's frustrating.
Go ahead. Sorry, no, I was just going to say, the California their policy about getting your gun rights back it's especially striking, because they. Legislators there supposedly are reformers, and they like rehabilitation. They like giving people second chances. They passed, criminal justice several major criminal justice reforms in recent years. This is a criminal justice reform, making it easier for somebody to recover their constitutional rights after a conviction is absolutely a criminal justice reform, but they just don't see it that way.
Because it has to do with guns. That's why.
Right.
If there's anything else, they're all about it. All right, Jacob, I got to go. Hey, thanks so much, my friend. I look forward to talking to you again soon.
See you later.
All right, folks, we're out of time. We got more coming up. The Michael Duke Show. Common sense, liberty-based, free thinking radio. Let's do it.
Whoa, buddy. Put that thing back in its holster. We haven't gone anywhere.
I don't understand.
Check out the MichaelDukesShow.com for information on how to get access to the podcast.
The Michael Duke Show.
I have 2 guns, one for each of you.
Firearms Friday.
As Thomas Jefferson stated, it is the right and duty of the people to be at all times armed.
Say hello to my little friend.
I say that the Second Amendment is, in order of importance, the First Amendment. The right to keep and bear arms is the one right that allows rights to exist at all.
The Michael Duke Show. The right to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. Firearms.
From my cold, dead hands.
Friday.
Here's my rifle, this is my gun, this is for riding, it's for fun.
Firearms Friday.
Firearms Friday, your chance to sound off on issues of a Second Amendment nature right here on the Michael Duke Show. Welcome back to Hour 2 of the big radio broadcast. Assault radio. That's what we lovingly call it. It's assault radio because we hurt your feelings sometimes. That's how we work. That's how we roll around here. Just finished up with Jacob Sullum, senior editor for Reason Magazine, on some stories in Colorado and California and some of the crazy stuff that's happened in a post-Bruin world. Bruin has proven to be one of the absolute best things for the defense of the Second Amendment that we've seen ever in this country. And even though they try to end run around some of this stuff with their so-called sensitive spaces bills and everything else, we're seeing those being shot down and riddled full of bullets pretty much everywhere we go at this point. We were just talking about about Colorado. And again, as he pointed out, they've now replaced the original bill, which had dozens of places that you couldn't carry your concealed carry firearm, from banks to bars, carnivals to churches, dispensaries, hospitals, arenas, parks, zoos, every place else, basically creating a hodgepodge. Now they've narrowed it down to just basically 4 or 5 places: the state capitol building, or much of it, public and private schools. I think that one's going to be a sticking point for private schools, courthouses, polling places, and local buildings, unless the local government chooses to allow firearms, which, at least there is that. You hopefully would live in a community that would allow that to take place. Anyway, it's an interesting thing to watch when they brought it down from dozens and dozens of places to just a handful. They're getting serious about wanting to try to make sure that these things withstand scrutiny. But the lawfare continues. We saw the same thing happen with the bump stock ban, where of all people, Nancy Pelosi warned the government from trying to impose that bump stock ban through fiat, through the ATF's executive pressure and their decision, because she said that's Congress's place. Otherwise, it'll never withstand legal scrutiny. And it hasn't. It just keeps going on. One of the legacies of the Trump administration was the banning of bump stocks and the fostering and pushing of red flag laws across the country. She said this is not going to withstand the legal scrutiny. And the courts have basically come back and said you cannot have, through executive fiat, administrative action, or bureaucracy, have these fundamental rights infringed on. And it's not just the gun rights. They smacked down the EPA over the Clean Water Act. Same kind of thing. You can't have a bureaucracy or regulators make law just because Congress has abdicated their authority or tried to pass that authority over to them. That's Congress's job, not the bureaucrats. And it's good to see that some of those things are turning around and changing. And I'm definitely happy to see it. One of the other cases that's very similar in those veins was, of course, the recent move by the Biden administration to make pistol braces, to reclassify any firearm, any pistol that has a pistol brace on it, as a short-barreled rifle. They reclassified these pistol braces. It's the same. This is a monkey see, monkey do. This is exactly what happened with the. This is exactly what happened with the bump stocks. They had been legal for years. There were determination letters which is a determination letter is an official letter from the ATF saying that said item is legal, right? When they say, we need you to make a determination, is this item legal or not? They send a determination letter out that says this item is legal. And there were dozens of letters from various manufacturers determining that their bump stock, or in this case, their pistol brace, was legal. And then arbitrarily one day they decide to just, nope, not legal anymore. And the judges across the country in various circuits have been shooting these things down as well, saying you just can't make that that's not, you have no justification for it. And it makes no sense. And by the way, you don't even have the legal standing to make those kind of regulatory decisions. On the bump stocks, they were trying to reclassify them as machine guns because it functions with more than a single pull of the trigger. Although mechanically, that's not true. Your finger actuates the trigger with every bullet fired. And that was pointed out actually by some of the judges. The Supreme Court right now has got the bump stock ban in front of it, and it's not looking good. Let's just put it that way. It's not looking good for that to come down. But recently, a federal court has now come down on the side of the arm brace ban, where, again, if you have a pistol brace on your pistol, you have a short barrel rifle or an SBR, which without a $200 tax stamp and a background check makes you a felon, right? Anyway, no one was surprised about how quickly this move by the ATF was met with lawsuits, and there are a number of lawsuits across the country. But earlier this week, a judge ruled that members of the biggest gun rights group in the country are now exempt from that arm brace rule. A democratically appointed judge recently barred the federal agency from enforcing a pistol brace rule for millions of members of the NRA as the appeal process continues. U.S. District Judge Sam Lindsay, who was appointed by Bill Clinton in '98, sided with the gun rights groups in a ruling handed down on Friday. Last year, the NRA filed a lawsuit against the BATF, which argued that the agency's measure introduced last year to reclassify the pistols equipped with braces as SBRs is unconstitutional. The federal judge said in a filing that the Fifth U.S. Circuit Court of Appeals had already concluded that ATF's pistol brace rule fails the logical outgrowth test and violates the Administrative Procedure Act and is unlawful under the act, which dictates the process with which federal agencies develop and issue regulations. So not only have they taken into powers that they shouldn't have in the first place, they actually violated their own process in reclassifying these regulations. He also agreed with the NRA's arguments that its members would face irreparable harm under the rule. And he says compliance with that final rule is not discretionary, and the NRA's members face severe penalties for failure to comply. Accordingly, both the final requirements for injunctive relief are satisfied because the threatened injury to NRA members outweighs the threatened harm to defendants, and enforcement of the final rule under the circumstances will not disserve the public interest. So the judge it prohibits the ATF from enforcing the final rule against the NRA members pending the final resolution of the action on its merits. So if you didn't have another reason why you needed to be a part of the NRA or GOA as well, bump stocks was a GOA thing, right? Gun Owners of America. They are exempt from the bump stock rule as well. Maybe throw out a few shekels to those organizations and make sure that you're covered, just as we, call it legal insurance. If you have an arm brace, call it legal insurance. Even though I think the NRA is a hot mess right now, and they need to clean house because of their dumpster fire attitude. This would, I guess, be a reason to throw your 35 or 45, whatever it is these days, bucks in the kitty to become a member. And the NRA has lost membership in recent years, but it's still millions of members. Millions of members. Now, remember, this is a left-leaning judge, which doesn't automatically make him anti-gun, but it does suggest that he probably is, leans in that direction. And despite that, he found that there was no way for him to rule in favor of this legislation. And again, I think some of that comes from Bruin and some of the other things not wanting to be overturned, but he ruled in favor of the NRA, which is definitely not a bad thing at that point. I think that's some good news for those of us who are tired of this administrative bureaucratic creep and overreach. All right, I'm going to open up the phone lines. If you have anything that you'd like to say, now's the time to do it. 907-433-3150, 907-433-3150. Any stories that you want to jump in and talk about, we'd love to hear that. We talked about that. There was a shooting in Finland. I don't know if you heard about that here this week on Tuesday. Everybody keeps talking about how we don't want these, we need better laws like they have in fill in the blank, Australia, England, Finland, Norway. And yet we had a shooting at a school shooting in Finland that just took place over the weekend, where they have some of the most, repressive gun laws in the world. And it still happens. So again, the myths there are not lost on me. And I guess the bigger question is, the Atlantic wrote a piece here recently asking the question about whether doctors should be asking questions about guns with their patients or not. And this is an interesting discussion that we've had before, but I think, there may be a time and a place for that discussion with your physician or with your mental health professional. But it's not a question that should be generally asked, of every patient. But some people are saying that that's the right way to go. That again, they don't want to normalize guns. They want to make you feel like it's a public safety issue, a public health issue. And they're encouraging doctors to ask a lot of these questions. And so I want to know, how would you feel about a doctor that is out there, asking questions? I mean, would you be comfortable if you went in for your general checkup and your doctor started asking you about your guns? What would your thoughts be on that? 907-433-3150. We're going to continue here in just a moment. The Michael Duke Show. Your phone calls up next, and then Willie Waffle, wafflemovies.com. We will return in just a moment. Don't go anywhere. Back with more right after this.
We're broadcasting live through a series of tubes.
Allowing all of these entities to provide streaming stuff going on the internet.
Well, it's kind of hard to explain. Sorry. Streaming live every weekday morning on Facebook Live and MichaelDukesShow.com.
Okay. We're in the break right now. Let me get caught up in the chat room. What are you guys looking for? Okay. None your business. I'm sorry. Brian just said, hard to say no when the jelly finger is coming. The guys know what we're talking about here. Turn your head and cough. Hard to say no when the jelly finger's coming. Oh, God. Oh, God. Brian says he's only ready to talk to his doctor about his guns if he's ready to share his load recipe for reloading. All right. You go back over here, see what you guys have been talking about. Brian's been very chatty this morning. Brian said, my opinion is the government lawyers, because we were talking about the government lawyers saying, well, we would have done a better job if you'd told us that we needed to bring all this information in. He says, my opinion is government lawyers are generally not the best or the brightest, but are hired for their activism. I would not disagree with that. Chris said, in regards to the sensitive spaces where you've got a mall with a bank in it and everything else, he said, can you imagine building a bank next to a gun shop with that law? How would you, how? If they shared a parking lot or had adjoining parking lot, how would you? Yeah, no, it's definitely problematic, to say the least. We will not answer questions about guns with doctors, says Chris. I'll be honest with you. If a doctor started going on and on about, unless I was there for some kind of mental health evaluation and I was, really down and depressed and was having, suicidal thoughts or something like that, I could see that question being asked at that point. But other than that, why? Why would you ever be comfortable with somebody asking that question? Sandy says, doctors already ask if you feel safe in your home, and that's intrusive enough. Yeah. Yeah. Jeannie says it all. If a doctor asks you if you have guns, you politely stand up, shake his hand, and tell him he's fired as you walk out the door. Oh, man. Yeah. It's been going on a long time. In 2008, this doctor I had seen at the VA asked about them on their form. It's been going on a long time. Yeah, it has been going on a long time. Doesn't make it right. Just, it is what it is. Marit says, I was really shocked. I was told by the troopers I was charged with a DV, domestic violence. I was shocked. I had no idea. How do I get this off my record? This was a year ago. He said I was arrested. Nope. Marit, you need to look at Court View. Look at your record on Court View, and I would go talk to the local prosecutor about it if that's what it is. Ammo Land is weighing in on the 7.62 versus 308 debate. Time to get the popcorn out. If that's the biggest problem we have these days, Brian, if that's the biggest challenge, then bring it on. Just bring it on. That's where it is. I'm ready to do it. It's just insane. Okay. We're down to the last minute here. I've got 2 lines on hold and I don't have enough time to get their names. So we're just going to go. We're going to do it live. Evan will do it live. We're just going to jump in there and go with it. We'll see how it is. We'll see how it is. All right. Getting ready to do it. Don't forget to like and share the show for today. Tell your friends, your neighbors, your relatives. Cry it from the rooftops. Yeah, I'm sure one of these calls is probably Fred. You're right, Terry. I'm sure it probably is. So we'll look forward to that here, and we'll get to it. The Michael Duke Show, common sense, liberty-based, free-thinking radio. Again, I just said like and share. Subscribe. That's what I meant. Ring the bell. Do all that stuff. Let's get to it. Here we go.
What the hell's an assault weapon? What isn't? If I assault you with a penguin, doesn't that make it an assault weapon? Does this mean that if we hurt your feelings, you'd consider the Michael Dukes Show assault radio? Okay, we can live with that. Here's Michael Dukes.
All right, welcome back to the program. It is Firearms Friday, your chance to sound off on issues of a Second Amendment nature here on the program. We got 2 lines on hold. The phone lines are open at 433-3150. Let's go over here and see who is waiting to talk with us this morning. Good morning. Who is this? Where are you calling from?
Good morning, Mike. It's Fred. How you been?
Well, hello, Mr. Fred. How are you doing, my friend, from Rhode Island?
Yep. Yeah, I have an interesting one for you. Last evening, I attended a class on the Massachusetts gun laws because, they're a neighboring state. So you're kind of interested as to, going to, they put on by Gold, the Gun Owners Action League of Massachusetts, sponsored it. They were very thorough. One point that is kind of interesting, they claim that there is no registration of firearms in the state of Massachusetts. When you buy a firearm or transfer a firearm, it goes into a registry. They claim it's not a registry. They have this crazy system called a reporting system. Now, you can figure out the difference between a reporting system and a registry. I'd be interested to hear, how it works. But they claim that when you make it, they have like online things and, things you can do, in person on a regular paper form and or online. I guess the big thing now is online. Everything's going online. So you go online. You put your information in, and it reported that you have received this firearm or you have transferred this firearm to someone else. And apparently that's acceptable. But then again, they claim it's not a registry. So what's the difference if you report it as no longer in your possession or now being in your possession, and you have to report it to them, according to their, their particular system.
Right.
And it's not a registry. Does that make any sense?
Well, no, because I mean, if it retains the records, of the transfer, it's a registry. You can say it's not a registry and call it something else, but it is a registry. It's not just a reporting thing. If they can go back and say, hey, look, you said 2 years ago that you bought this rifle and you took possession of this rifle, and they's like, where is it? Because they have a record of it. That is a registry. Explain to me how that's not.
Exactly.
I mean, that makes no sense other than semantics. I don't understand it.
It doesn't make any sense. Like I say, they claim one thing, but they call it something else, and which is like, I guess it's, you can call, a rose by any other name is still a rose, and a registry by any other name is still a registry, but they claim, no, we have no registration here. Yeah, okay,
right.
And this seems to be the crux of a lot of the gun laws that are taking place around the country in Colorado and California and New York and all these places. We put these laws in. Oh no, we're not doing this, to beat down the Second Amendment and destroy your gun rights. But then again, everything they do is just one more brick on the load.
Right. Well, I guess the question is the reporting is it required by law? Is that reporting that you do, they say is not a registry, is it required by law?
Yes, it is.
Then
absolutely.
there's
all kinds of fines.
Yeah. So if it's required by law and they retain a record of it, that is a registry. There's just no two ways about that, Fred.
Yep, absolutely. It's crazy. It's absolutely nuts. Their laws are incredibly entangled and twisted. You really have to have a law degree to try to figure out exactly what the hell they're doing.
Oh, and I think
why they want to do it that way. We know why they want to.
Yeah, well, I think that
the Second Amendment.
Right, that's by intention. The laws being so twisty and indecipherable, that's by total intent, Fred, for sure. All right, brother. Hey, it's good to hear from you. I appreciate it. I got a couple other calls on hold today, so let me jump over there. I appreciate you sounding off and jumping in. Let's go over here. Good morning. Who's this? Where are you calling from?
Good morning, Michael. This is Rod in North Pole, and I just thought in light of you bringing up the Docs versus Glocks thing, I'd share this with you.
Okay.
I recently had occasion to go to my dentist and to my doctor. My dentist and I had a rather interesting conversation about how he was getting on with his can that he had put on his sheep rifle.
Okay.
And my doc and I usually we flip a coin to see who asks the question first. It's something along the line of, what do you have that's new?
Right, exactly. That's the kind of doc you want to hang out with, for sure, versus other kinds of docs who are asking for a whole different. I mean, again, I would just walk out. I think Jeannie's got the right idea. If a doctor asks you that, you stand up, you shake their hand, and say you're fired.
Perhaps we have a different class of medical providers here in Alaska than other places.
Yeah. That's true. That's true. And I agree. I think that's the kind of conversations you have. So, all right. Thank you, Ron. Appreciate you calling in. All right, 907-433-3150 over here. We got more calls on hold. Good morning. Who's this? Where are you calling from? Hello, caller. Are you there?
Hello, this is Bill.
Hey, Bill.
I'm calling from the rail belt.
Okay. Bill, what's on your mind?
Okay, I'm hearing on your show several times already this morning an ad for our broom rider representative that is basically a political, like electioneering ad, and it says that it's paid for by funds from approved by the House of Representatives. I think what these people are doing is they're electioneering on government money, essentially, not money that they've raised privately in a legitimate campaign. There's no claim to it. Any organization for the candidate having paid for it privately. It says it's paid for out of money approved by the House of Representatives.
Well, Bill, I don't hear the commercials that play in the various locations around the state. So if there's a question that you have about a commercial, then you need to contact the local radio station that is playing it and ask them if you have questions, because I don't hear those commercials. So I don't see them. I don't hear them.
Okay. Yeah, I'm sure others of your listeners will be able to confirm this. Okay.
Yeah. Okay.
Bye-bye.
Thanks for your call. I appreciate it. Let's go over here. Another call. 907-433-3150. Good morning. Who's this? Where are you calling from?
Good morning, Michael. This is Carlene in Kodiak. About the medical providers, they're also trying to decipher if you are depressed. And they ask you many, many, many times during that visit. And the last visit I went to several years ago, tried to find out if I was depressed. I said, no, I'm in love. My childhood sweetheart just asked me to marry him. And I think the object is to get you into counseling and on medication. Well, when one of my last jobs ended, I had been burned out for so long. I've been burned out many times. So the doctor put me on Prozac, and my daughter couldn't reach me for a whole month and told me to stop it. Don't do that. But my best friend, her son just went to the medical provider with a bad shoulder, and they kept asking him if he was depressed. And he came home with medicine for depression, and my best friend said, he's not depressed. So there's something wacky going on there, Michael. And I reported something else, and they tried to convince me to go to counseling. And I said, but I've read 50 books on these subjects, and I read them over and over again. So they let me alone. Thanks, Michael.
Well, thanks, Carlene. I appreciate it. Yeah, I mean, I think that there is, in some areas of the medical profession, there is a propensity of, trying to push people into counseling and try and do those things when maybe it's not depression. Maybe it's just, frustration. Maybe it's anger. Maybe it's burnout. Maybe it's something else. But again, they can always use that to springboard into other things. Like I said, there's a very limited area that I would expect doctors to be. It would be acceptable, I would say, for doctors to ask about things like firearms ownership or storage or anything else. And that would be in situations where you are seeing somebody for depression, or suicidal thoughts or psychotic break or something like that. Then those questions may be appropriate. But other than that, we've got general practitioners, pediatricians, all these other kind of people asking questions that really are none of their business, other than they want to, their belief is that this is kind of an endemic thing. And it's frustrating to watch. It's very frustrating to watch. It wasn't, 1994? No, it was 2010. The American Academy of Pediatrics advice was to never, in big capital letters, never have a gun in the home, because the presence of one increases a child's risks of suicide or injury. So don't purchase a gun. And that was their stance as the American Academy of Pediatrics. And that's when doctors really started asking all those questions. And it's, again, this is a troubling thing that, you have to have a lot of trust in the person who is your doctor. And my wife and I have had some discussions lately, when we tried to find a new physician at one point. It was a very difficult thing when our old doctor moved away. What do you do? How do you do it? And you got to have a lot of trust, and to break that trust and fracture that trust the way that some of these doctors are doing is troubling. And it does nothing but hurt the overall profession and the relationship, I believe, unless there is a specific reason. I mean, I'll give you, there are specific reasons sometimes to ask those questions. Otherwise, it's none your business. None your business. All right, we got to go. The Michael Duke Show, common sense, liberty-based, free-thinking radio.
Streaming live every weekday morning on Facebook Live and MichaelDukesShow.com.
Okay, we're in the break. The countdown continues. Let me go back over here to the comments. None ya business. Leela just said it's a Mary Peltola ad, and yeah, it's a campaign ad paid for by the House of Representatives. Are we surprised? I haven't even heard that ad, but troubling. Yeah, let's see. I'm looking. It says, when you go to court view, put in the minimum information required, says Jeannie. And I heard this autocorrect is all crazy. And take note of others who come up. Take a look at others that come up. Look at your info, but also compare to others. They may have entered your info incorrectly and pulled up the wrong result. So there you go. Richard said, if my doctor asked me anything related to any issue I'm not in their office for, I would immediately tell him or her to stay in their lane, get off my tundra, and leave. Yeah, that's exactly. Are doctors fishing for head counts and kickbacks? There you go. This is what I was thinking. Richard said, I wasn't depressed until people started asking me repeatedly if I was depressed. Timothy says, Timothy, this is something wrong with you, man. I always thought it was an interesting question to ask if you feel like harming other people. The answer is always yes, but the law prevents it. Sometimes just people, you just want to strangle somebody, but I didn't mean it literally. Let's see. Brian says, why does it ask if you're from Mexico when you buy a gun? What makes them so special? I don't know. Other than maybe it's the border. I have no idea. No, I get no idea what's going on there. I would, but it's against the law. Oh, Timothy, that's a gem right there. Okay, all caught up on the commentary this morning and ready to go. Oh, let me get my stuff set up here. I got to connect my phone. I got to connect the phone. I got to change the light. I got to do all that kind of stuff here. Let me get all this squared away. Okay. I think I got it. I think I got it all. I think I got it. All right. There we go. Oh, Richard says they ask if you're from Mexico because apparently they'll fast track the purchase if you're illegal. It's not really true, folks. Okay. It's tongue in cheek. I have to set the mood. This is the mood lighting for Willie. This is the mood lighting. He likes it warm and colorful. That's what we're trying to do. Yeah, I'm looking forward to what Willie's going to talk about today. It might be I've been looking forward to this Monkey Man thing. I want to talk about that. Oh, it's a movie. The Monkey Man movie. You imagine having that on your resume? Monkey Man. I was the star of Monkey Man. That lighting looks depressing. It's an orange light. What do you want? It matches kind of the golden color of the background. What do you want? Do you want green? You want red? That just looks evil. Now purple. I don't know. We'll just do orange. Orange matches the background of what we're talking about. Tongue in cheek, another native joke. What? No, only in your mind, apparently. I just don't know. Do you get the Eric Holder discount if you mention you're from Mexico or stayed in a Holiday Inn? I'd like the Eric Holder discount. There was a lot of free guns going around out there for that. I'm all about that. We'll make that happen. I asked my doctor if he was up to date on the efficacy of an herbal supplement and made him pretty mad. Later, he got into legal trouble and never returned to our island. Yeah, well, that's what happens. Sometimes, out of the mouth speaks the heart. That's what it's all about. Okay. All right. We got to go. We're going to get ready to do it. Yep. Phone's buzzing. We're ready to we're ready to go do this thing. The Michael Duke Show, common sense, liberty-based, free-thinking radio. Like, share, subscribe, ring the bell, do all the YouTube and Facebook things that we need to do. And just enjoy yourself. Let's just enjoy ourselves, shall we? Let's get it done. We'll hang back and enjoy it. Here we go. Okay, it is weekend time. Are you ready? Are you ready? I'm ready. Let's do it. Willie Waffle, wafflemovies.com comes in for the streams, the entertainment report, the weekend movies, and all the stuff and things. Stuff and things, Lori. Stuff and things. So let's welcome him to the program with a hearty hello. Hi, how are you? What's happening?
Hey, Stuff and Things has been very, very good to me.
Stuff and Things. No, Double Stuff has been very good for you, right?
Oh, yeah.
Nothing like
although, I have to say, I liked it better when it was really Double Stuff.
Right.
Like now, they call it Double Stuff. No. We've done the math. We know it's like more of like one and a little extra stuff.
Yeah,
it's not double stuff anymore.
1.5 maybe. Yeah. Right, exactly. Boy, and Oreos, man, I haven't had Oreos in forever, but I was standing in the store just to show you inflation is real. They had a whole display right at the cash, because they're smart, right at the cash register,
right,
of this family-sized Double Stuff, and I'm like, okay, they're like $7 or something, and I'm like, ooh, that's a lot of money for cookies. But on top, they had this display of these small bags of Oreo cinnamon churro Oreos. And I was like, I'm not a huge fan of Oreos, but I love me some cinnamon churros. I should try that. But there was no price tag. So I throw it on the conveyor and I said, just price check that. It was $8. It was half the size of the family pack. $8. I said, nope. That inflation is real. Anyway, sorry. I just sidebar just for a minute.
No, these are the things that matter in life, man. Exactly. I'm telling you right now.
Yep, absolutely. All right, well, let's talk about the entertainment. There was some late breaking stuff, and you wanted to start with that. So let's go there with the late breaking stuff. Hit me with it.
I'm actually very, very excited about this. So it came out late yesterday that Mr. Conan O'Brien, the former host of the Tonight Show, who was very unceremoniously sent packing, will be appearing as a guest on the Tonight Show for the first time since he was canned.
And I don't even remember what happened over that. Why did he get canned? What was the thing? Do you remember?
What happened was, that Jay Leno was somewhat asked to step aside from hosting the Tonight Show, and it was given to Conan O'Brien. And what happened was Jay Leno was given a show at 10 o'clock at night, and Conan O'Brien was on during the Tonight Show. And it just didn't work out for either one of them. And Leno possibly, it's unclear, kind of pushed his way back into the Tonight Show, and Conan O'Brien was the sacrificial lamb who got tossed aside after being told, "Hey, we know the ratings aren't great, but we know it's going to take some time." And then all of a sudden, your ratings aren't very good. Your time is up.
So now he's coming back. Now he's coming back as a guest, and apparently they mend fences. And does Conan have a short memory or what? I mean, it's
No, I think that Conan realizes that everybody who did him wrong is gone.
Yeah.
It was like 13 years ago. Okay, so like maybe a little bit more than 13 years, but all those people are gone. And he has a new show coming on the Max streaming service, and he knows he wants to promote it. And well, I'm sorry, but what's more promotable than the guy who got fired from the Tonight Show is coming back? And he gets along with Jimmy Fallon, and they're not enemies. Jimmy had nothing to do with it.
Right.
Jimmy was actually one of the funniest people in the world when this was all happening, because you had Leno had he forced his way back in. Then a few years later he was retiring, and Jimmy Fallon said, "I don't think it's a good idea to be the next guy who hosts the Tonight Show."
Exactly. This could be a dangerous thing. All right. Well, we'll see what happens. I haven't watched a late night television show in so long. Oof, man.
Not many reasons to.
Yeah, it's like I don't even have broadcast television, so I can't even really, all right. Well, let's move on. This is an important one to me. Artificial intelligence is stealing our broadcast jobs. And
yes,
I cannot tell you how many emails I've received in the last 6 months from companies that are now offering to produce our commercials with artificial intelligence. And for the radio stations. And it's, as a voice actor, I'm a little worried about that. I'll be honest with you. But it's gotten bigger than that. They actually have artificial influencers now who, I mean, how can you even a social media influencer who's not even a real person? Well, I guess that could apply to everyone. But I mean, it's I'm freaked out by this. Give me the details.
Oh, yeah. No. I am completely freaked out by artificial intelligence. Like, I'm one of those people who sits up at night and says, if we don't stop it now, we're all going to be, behind a barrel. Okay. Like, this is going to be bad for society. I really, honestly, truly believe that. And this is a great sign of it. So they have created this artificial intelligence figure, Alba Renee, who is, a gorgeous computer-generated woman who is now going to be the first non-human host on a weekly segment of the Spanish version of Survivor. So she's going to have this segment where it's supposed to be like the secrets behind Survivor, with all sorts of exclusive footage and behind-the-scenes content. And all I'm thinking is like I'm like, this is a computer, man.
Right.
This isn't cool. You're taking away jobs from real human beings. It's going to happen. And and it's funny because the company behind it is trying to say, well, there's like 32 different programmers and people behind this. We're actually creating jobs. Baloney. As soon as the technology gets better, you're going to lay those people off.
Yeah.
Okay?
Yeah. No, exactly. It's spooky, man. It's spooky. And it's a little creepy. I'll be honest with you. I've seen some AI generated stuff, some not newscasters, but presentations and stuff. And I'm like, it does creep me out, and it hurts my soul because, of course, I love the spoken word, and I love voice acting and performing, and I think it's sad to see this go. But they're not quite to human standards yet. We'll have to see where it goes. All right. What else we got here? Oh, we got Lindsay Lohan. She might be back in the spotlight again. I mean, it's that she even still a thing. It's so crazy. But Lindsay Lohan and the Queen of Scream, Jamie Lee Curtis, might be back to do Freaky Friday.
Yeah, and Lindsay Lohan, I'm with you. I kind of mock a little bit, but over the past few years, she's had a nice little relationship making these Netflix movies that are kind of like their Netflix version of Hallmark movies. She's had a little bit of success. According to her and everybody around her, she's got her life back on track. And, she is going to have, I think this would be a big comeback for her. Yes, the sequel to Freaky Friday 2. And this is the sequel to the one that Jamie Lee Curtis and Lindsay Lohan did, which was kind of like their remake of the classic Disney movie. And this is something Jamie Lee Curtis has been pushing for a while. She said for a few years she really wants to do this. She wants to make this happen. She's like been lobbying Disney to make it happen. So while they haven't officially signed their deals yet, this is moving forward. They've got a director on board. They've got a script on board, and they think that they can be making it this summer, which means, they might get it on, maybe late in the year. I wouldn't say late in the year. I'd say early 2025, depending on what they want to do with it. It's not clear if this would be a Disney Plus movie or if they want to release it to theaters. But, this is happening. And, let's be honest, it's a big name. It's a big franchise. I think it could do pretty well.
Well, I'm interested to see. I mean, she definitely would have had to hang up her crazy because Lindsay Lohan is, I mean, she's a hot mess, and has been for a long time.
It was dangerous.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I'm glad to hear that she, anybody that can overcome their stuff. I mean, I'm down with that. I think that's a perfect thing. So good for her. We'll look forward to seeing that. All right. One last thing. What do we got here? Felicity Huffman.
Yeah.
Who was the big star of what was that housewife show? Not Real Housewives, Desperate Housewives.
Desperate Housewives.
Yeah, and she and a bunch of people kind of in the same area were all caught getting their kids, paying big money to get their kids into college, cheating on SATs and all kinds of stuff. And she served time in prison for this. This was like a real deal. But she's back apparently.
Yeah, she's back. The college admission scandal, which was such a big deal a few years ago. Like you said, Felicity Huffman, Lori Loughlin from Full House was one of the people who also had a big problem, is they were faking that her girls were like these athletes who could be on like the crew team or something at USC, and they never even got into a boat, and they got these big scholarships and they got in. Well, Felicity Huffman kind of did something similar. She was caught paying $15,000 to falsify her daughter's SAT score. And then because of this, she ended up spending 14 days in jail. She paid a $30,000 fine. She did 250 hours of community service. And now she's trying to make her comeback. And she really hasn't done anything since this whole thing happened around like 2019. Well, now she is going to have a guest starring role on Paramount Plus's Criminal Minds Evolution, which is a spinoff of Criminal Minds. And, she is going to play a role that many think could become a recurring character or even a starring role on the show if the public is receptive enough. She would end up playing the ex-wife of a Criminal Minds character named Jason Gideon, who was played by Mandy Patinkin early on. And so the whole story is that she's got connections to all the people on the show, and she's going to try to help them solve crimes, and maybe they're going to bring her back in. Okay. Now, I will say this. If she makes a comeback anything like Lori Loughlin, I will be there. Lori Loughlin kind of went the opposite route. Instead of, doing like a serious drama, she made a guest appearance on Larry David's Curb Your Enthusiasm on HBO this year. And I'm telling you, it was the funniest thing I have ever seen, because she played a character, like everybody on the show is kind of like an exaggerated version of themselves. And she wanted to be part of the country club, but everybody was kind of wary because of the scandal. Larry says, she paid her debt. I'll support her. And she turns out to be just kind of a shyster in every situation on the show. It's nice. Hilarious.
They always say self-deprecating humor is the best. So maybe that's what it worked out to be. All right. So we'll see what Felicity Huffman does on Criminal Minds, a new spinoff, which I haven't watched a single episode of any of. I'm just such an old fuddy-duddy. I just, there's certain things I like, and I guess that's what I'm going to watch. All right, let's get down to it. We got we don't have much time. So we got Monkey Man, The First Omen, and Ripley. Give it to me. If you want to drop one, do it now. Tell me what you got here.
And frankly, none of this is all that exciting. I mean, Ripley is the new Netflix series. It is a takeoff of the talented Mr. Ripley. You might remember that movie, or you're familiar with the book series. Well, this is like the boring Mr. Ripley. This is like, it's like a 10-episode series, all shot in black and white. Kind of seeing Tom Ripley as more of, a con man, a flim-flam artist, a grifter who's going off to Europe to try to bring back this rich guy's son who's been just gallivanting all over Italy. It's just slow and it's boring and there's nothing really exciting about it. I'm at like one waffle. I don't want to see any more.
Oh, gosh.
Then,
okay.
Yep. Then we'll jump into maybe the movie that at least might be worth a try. And that would be Monkey Man. And this is Dev Patel, the actor. A lot of people know him from Slumdog Millionaire. That's like his biggest thing he's done.
Right.
But he stars as kind of this underground fighter. His deal is he wears like a monkey mask, like a rubber monkey mask, kind of like like he's some sort of WWE luchador or something.
Right.
And he's in these underground fights, and he makes his money that way. But he wants revenge. He wants revenge on the people who destroyed his village, the people who harmed his mother. And he's slowly trying to work his way up the ladder to get close enough to get that revenge. And that's a cool idea. Now, again, I think this one's a little bit plodding, a little bit slow. It doesn't have a ton of action movie. I mean, you hear it's the Fight Club. You don't really get a lot of action. You get like maybe 3 really good action scenes. But I think it's interesting in the fact that I think Dev Patel really kind of crafts this almost non-hero kid that you want to root for and you want to support as you see what he's fighting against. I'm at like 2.5 waffles. I thought it was okay.
Yeah, I saw the trailers for this and I thought this looks really good, but there was a lot of fighting in the trailer, so maybe you're getting all the high points, which is unfortunate. I hate it when they do that.
I think you're getting a lot of that. Yeah.
All right, final one. We got about 90 seconds here. The First Omen. My wife can't wait.
Well, it just, basically, I feel like I saw this movie a couple of weeks ago. It was called Immaculate with Sydney Sweeney there, right? And here, this one is kind of the same idea. It's a prequel to The Omen. And if you remember The Omen and you remember Damien, now you understand what's going to happen in The First Omen. And that kind of disappoints me because it takes away the excitement. But, she's this young, nun in training, played by Nell Tiger Free, a woman with one of the greatest names ever. And she's sent off to Rome. She's in service of God, and she discovers there's a plot at this orphanage to bring about evil incarnate. And I'm thinking, wait, orphanage?
Evil incarnate, Damien.
I think I know. Oh yeah. I'm at like 2 waffles. I think it's more gory than it is scary, and that to me is disappointing. And like I said, I think they did Immaculate is pretty much the same movie, and it was a better movie. So I'm at like 2 waffles.
Willie Waffle, wafflemovies.com. We'll see you next week, my friend, folks. We'll see you on Monday. Thanks for coming on board. Well, we ran almost 10 seconds long there, but I'll fix it somehow. I'll make it work. Anyway, my wife is, she loves horror movies, but this is more gore than horror. Is that kind of what it comes down to?
Yeah, it's really more like let me repulse you than let me thrill you, and that to me is disappointing. I'm more of let me. I would rather be creeped out. I would rather be scared the old-fashioned way. Like I love movies like The Conjuring. Where they're frightening but they're not gory.
Right. It's like The Conjuring versus something from Eli Roth, like Human Centipede or something.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it.
Yeah.
I wish I had said that. That was actually a really good way to put it.
Yeah. I'm only here to help. I'm with you. I dislike the gore. I don't mind the scary. The Conjuring, I thought that was good. Should watch that. We're going to watch The Pope's Exorcist this weekend. I think my wife has finally talked me into it. We're going to watch Nefarious maybe. And those are supposed to be like thrillers and scary, not gory. And the gore doesn't do anything for me. I'm like, that was unnecessary, kind of thing. So, but that's good. But Monkey Man, that looks pretty good. I'll have to bite my tongue and be there for the dearth of action to see what's going on. It'll be okay.
It won't totally disappoint you, but it won't totally thrill you.
Yeah, that's okay. So the question is, of course, that everybody's asking is, did you do your homework? Mile 22.
Oh God. Oh God, I forgot.
I would say you're a horrible friend, but you're not, so I can't say that. But
God,
yeah,
I'm so sorry.
one of these days we'll watch Mile 22.
I gotta remember. Now, I'll be honest with you. It's gonna be hard for me to do it this weekend. It's WrestleMania weekend. There's not gonna be a lot of free time for me this weekend.
Oh, I forgot. You and Brendan. You and Brendan are like, Brendan's my former producer here on the program. You and Brendan will be like WrestleMania all weekend long.
It is all weekend now. It's 2 nights now.
Yeah.
It's on Saturday and Sunday night.
You guys are just so geeky. All right. It's all cool, man. It's all cool. All right. Well, Willie, thank you so much, my friend. We will see you next week. Thanks for coming on board.
All right. See you then.
Folks, gotta go. Out of time. Don't forget to join me tomorrow at the Libertarian Luncheon for the Libertarian Party convention over at Matsu Resort. I'll be there at noon. It's a Saturday. I'm hoping I can wake up in time. Noon on a Saturday. That's a hard ask. We'll see you tomorrow. If you come out there, we'll see you Monday. Otherwise, have a great weekend.
We've shed our terrestrial radio skin, and now we are slimy lizard internet people. It's the Michael Duke Show.